set auto-destruct sequence.
It's the time allotted that concerns me.
Recognize Picard, Jean-Luc, Captain. Recognize Riker, William T., Commander.
Maximum warp!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Warp Core Podcast. I'm UrzaMaster. Joining me as always, Lord Uther, and from the Great Q Continuum, we have Fert Derby joining us. If you're watching us on YouTube, that disembodied voice, it's a Q. If you're listening to us on Spotify, of course we can see Fert Derby. What are you talking about, YouTube? Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome back. If you're not already following us on Spotify, make sure to click that follow button. If you're not subscribed to us on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscriber button. We've got a lot of Star Trek to talk about in our lifetimes, and hopefully more as we go. But today we are talking Strange New Worlds, and most specifically, the interesting entry at Episode 4, Season 3, A Space Adventure Hour. And what an adventure this one turned out to be. I gotta say, when I saw Holodeck and Strange New Worlds, I was pretty skeptical because TOS didn't have a holodeck. What's happening here? Fert Derby, take it away. What's happening here?
Hi, guys. So, let's embark on a space adventure hour. The director really doesn't need an introduction, so I'll just say his name was Jonathan Frakes. The writers, we had Dana Horgan and Catherine Lynn. And if past is prologue, you could already see that this episode might have a little bit of a softer, lighter touch based on their previous credits. Dana Horgan, she actually did Ad Astra per Aspera, which was number 1 Una on Trial. That was the second episode of season 2, as I recall. And she co-wrote Subspace Rhapsody, which I will never pronounce correctly, but I sure can sing it, and that's what the Enterprise crew was doing in season 2, breaking into song at a drop of a beat. And then Catherine Lynn, she worked on Charades, which was episode 5 of season 2, where Spock suddenly became fully human and had to pretend he was Vulcan for the in-laws, and the comedy of errors that ensued. And also worked on Those Old Scientists, the aforementioned Lower Decks crossover, live-action Lower Decks crossover that Jonathan Frakes directed, episode 7 of season 2. Basically, friends, get ready for some shenanigans and tomfoolery. And yes, all of us have said countless times, why didn't we have holodecks in 1968? Well, there were many reasons for that, but you kind of have to explain it, don't you? Or maybe you don't. But this is one of those episodes that clearly and firmly establishes what was going on with that thread. I know UrzaMaster has said before, you don't have to explain everything, but here, I actually think the explanation was both well done and necessary. What threw me was the 3 or 4 minute pre-credits. Well, the credits were held to the end of this episode, but the little tease at the beginning, which, gentlemen, I'm at a loss for words, and that's not something that happens very often on our broadcasts. That was, first of all, William Shatner is still alive, right? Like, he can still watch streaming his favorite Paramount shows. So I have a feeling that between now and last Thursday when this episode dropped, someone might have mentioned to him that they were going to embody him, or at least his spirit, in what can only be described as a tongue fully through the cheek pastiche parody of the Roddenberry Star Trek era, from costumes to production design to everything else. And it's kind of breaking that fourth wall we talked about in prior podcasts, the meta, if you will. And this might be something based on the teaser for Starfleet Academy. Look how I worked this one into there. When the big bad of the series, rumored to be Paul Giamatti, is walking through a corridor at the end of the teaser, whistling the 1968 TOS theme, like out loud, which obviously can't exist in the universe of the show because it's not really a show. Like, suddenly they're starting to like really kind of poke at that fourth wall. Something that Marvel did with their She-Hulk series on Disney Plus a couple of years ago. They're starting to see what they can get away with a wink and a nod, and try and make these little side eyes to the audience, and it's interesting. It's not something that Gene Roddenberry or even Rick Berman was probably 100% comfortable with when they were running the ship, but we're seeing it here. It's playful, but I mean, wow, the William Shatner Kirk being played by this series' incarnation of Kirk, I believe it's James Wesley is doing that. Like I said, if I'm William Shatner, I hope I took it in the spirit in which it was proffered, because it was a devastating takedown of that. Again, delivered, I think, with love and affection. It was not meant to be a stab in the back, but boy, it came across as very pointed and very satirical in that fashion, as well as the ridiculous levers that the Erica character was pulling, and the alien, the obvious puppeteer. Like, that whole sequence was so gonzo. How was it possible that you could ever replicate that? But gentlemen, we did replicate it. We had our inaugural hologram test run, holodeck test run, and poor Scotty spent most of the episode plugging and unplugging things to get it all to work, which also is a problem when you're trying to dodge neutrino star emissions. So that had a little bit of mid-episode drama there. And then we're back. We are not doing Gumshoe. We're not doing Picard, 30s Private Eye. We're not doing some of the Data and the Sherlock Holmes episodes I will be coming to on our Next Generation down the road. We were doing a little bit of a Agatha Christie by way of Rian Johnson's Knives Out. Get a bunch of people together in a house, have a dead body turn up. Even 1985's underrated Clue followed this formula here. Rule out all of your suspects one by one. Everybody had a motive, but only one of them was the killer. And we'll talk about the reveal of said killer and so forth, and how you thought they handled it. Gentlemen, Star Trek is no stranger to mirth and humor. We've already had it this season in episode 2 with the wedding that almost wasn't. And we have the kindlings, the sparks, the ignition of a potential even new romantic fire, and all of that. Lots to get to, gentlemen. How did you handle a space adventure hour?
Humor. It's my MST3K reference. Is Lon becoming the James T. Kirk of Strange New Worlds? Ooh. That's a whole nother episode we can tap into on the newest podcast that's coming along soon. The Alternative Factor here at Warp Core Productions. Anyway, I'm going to start with this. Anson Mount needs to win some kind of award for this episode. He showed off his acting chops that we usually give to Ethan Peck, but Anson Mount has been consistent throughout this entire series, right? Like, his acting is just spot on every single time. We continuously talk about believing in these characters, that they are who we thought they were. And here we let him get outside of the Pike mold, and he nails it. Completely nails this creepy type of
insecure
producer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just so darn good. And I don't know about you, but I felt like Lon looked like Carmen Sandiego for some reason. I totally had that vibe. Mm-hmm. To me, this was Clue, one of my all-time favorite underrated movies, Clue, and this was completely that. They figured out a way. I'm still trying to figure out, and I'm going to let you guys convince me one way or the other about there being a holodeck. I understand why we don't see it until next gen, because it was consuming too much power, and to me it also seemed like the AI kind of took over and said we need more power, and they were doing that. On the fence with that a little bit. And then how much Spock and Lon, I'm trying to figure that one out now. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm not saying I'm for it. Again, I need to be convinced a little bit here, because the love for Chapel seems so deep, and then we see this later on in TOS. And is this Lon thing like a rebound? Do Vulcans go through rebounds? Whole nother alternative episode there, alternative factor episode. But is this just like a rebound relationship? Are they going to fall in love? Like, where are they going with this? Is it too far into the season to introduce this? So much to figure out.
Let me take a real quick hit on that, Ursa, and then we'll go over there. I got the impression that this is 90% Lon and Spock, or 80-20. I just felt that she was the driver, that she was sort of having that awakening of, man, I'm really into this guy. And we can debate Spock's motives all we want. I think you raised a good point. How invested is he? But I saw this as her suddenly realizing it's been right in front of me the whole time. It's the Vulcan. So that's how I was reading this relationship, and we'll see how it develops and what that means, as you say. But I would say that this is a Lon forward sort of attraction, and Spock's motives. I will trust him to be a gentleman, or a gentle Vulcan. But I think she's the one who's really kind of pushing this. It's that darn tango. I'm telling you, it's the dance of love.
I sort of agree. I think they set this up a bit in the Wedding Bell Blues episode, and I think there's more mutual attraction there than meets the eye. I also feel like it makes a little more sense. Nurse Chapel is very human, and I think that was appealing to Spock's struggle with his humanity, so to speak. And now this is much more of a Vulcan appeal. Lon is very stoic. She's very reserved in terms of her emotions. She's very calculated. She's very logical. This is Spock slowly moving towards the Spock we see in the TOS. The logical has a streak of humor, has a streak of maybe sexuality, but it's all very much buried and controlled, and he's learning that control as he goes, and that is something that I'm actually really enjoying. Like I think having a love story just helps drive lots of plot points. That's good to have, and there's probably, Lon is not in TOS, so there's probably going to be a heartbreak at some point. That character is going to eventually go away somehow, so that brings her character conclusion in eventuality a much more strong emotional punch, however it looks, and I think that's huge. I also think that this is a great callback to a lot of TNG episodes where there's a holodeck malfunction, and it's like, why on earth is this holodeck always malfunctioning, or why is this so challenging? Now we know it's a incredibly resource heavy software, essentially an AI, that it demands so much of the ship that it's hard for the ship to even, this Enterprise is by no means equipped to maintain it, but it definitely explains a lot of, Enterprise D having issues, despite the fact that it's the flagship and it's so advanced and it's the first of its class and it has this advanced holodeck. Even in Voyager we get some holodeck malfunctions. So it speaks to the fact that, like, despite the technology being super great, it's not perfect. And there's still, like, limitations, and there's some science behind that, and I love that. It also shows how, like, incredible an engineer Scotty is to take a very primitive Enterprise and run a holodeck on it successfully. Even, despite its challenges, like, they had to test it. It's going to be rigorous, and they have to adapt to it. And Scotty still somehow saves the ship. at the end of the day. And he does get the "but good job" moment that, of course, Ortegas didn't get. That all being said, like, the way they contrive this episode is very Clue-like. And I love that they're bringing in offbeat to this. And a lot of what we've seen is the emotional height is up here in the first episode. So the second episode dips, and then third episode was pretty heavy emotionally, maybe not as heavy as the first, and then this one's kind of your rebound. It's sort of that Shakespearean way of telling a longer story. So we have a serialized canon of a season that's sort of telling this Patel infection, the crew kind of rebounding after the Gorn, and at some point they'll reintroduce the big bad, whether it's the Gorn again or something new, new foray into the Klingons or the Romulans or the Breen, maybe, who knows. I'd love to see something like that, but as this ship pushes the boundaries of that 5-year journey, you got to have some breaks in the action to tell some other types of stories, and this is the one where they're literally telling Gene Roddenberry's story. They're canceling it because they're getting rid of me. I think there's probably some more truth to the way this story was told than maybe others want to let on. And I think probably Roddenberry was a lot like Anson Mount portrays him. And it gives us an interesting comic picture. It's probably played up to a touch, but I guarantee for those who are still living, who were present at that time, I guarantee part of this is probably grounded solidly in reality. And Bill Shatner, to his credit, often embraces the portrayals of him in a manner that, there's no vitriol anymore. He's what, almost 95 now? Like, who cares?
Right.
He's not so protective of himself as he once was. But I think the way that, we see our new Kirk portraying William Shatner is pretty apt. I think a lot of the sentiment we hear from the people around him are what people were thinking at the time, probably very specifically George Takei, and they didn't quite breach that exactly, but I think they kind of maybe gave it a wink and a nod. I also think that the way he delivers lines is interesting, and this isn't like the over-the-top Kirk we see from like a Jim Carrey in Living Color, or some of the Family Guy episodes where the head stays in one place while he's doing his chop talking, but his body's doing all sorts of goofy movement. Like, this is very muted compared to that, but it's close. Like, it's actually a pretty good representation of Kirk in some of those moments, and I love the lighting. I don't know if you guys caught this, where they switch it from left to right, and it's like, oh, that is absolutely TOS. They definitely did that shit. So I found this enjoyable from top to bottom, and I thought the cold open was kind of a unique way of approaching it. I thought that was intriguing, to say the least, and it does kind of set you up with that confused notion of what's really going on in this episode. And that was the question you had to be asking, so that you didn't guess that Spock was the one behind the murder. Because you really didn't know exactly what was going on. Did this star mess up the holodeck, so like now everybody's zapped into the holodeck, kind of like the reality where everybody's in middle-aged costume and running around with swords? For me, that was good. I quite enjoyed it.
I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Uther.
Well, I do like the Spock thing, because I didn't see that coming. Also, I do know that Paul Wesley got permission, like he's taught, like Shatner gave him his blessing. I think all these actors have to do that, right? Like, they got to reach out to Shatner and get the blessing to be James Kirk in a sense, and we'll have to do that until a fateful day. But look, I said this before through our chat. I'm just going to say it here now. This is 2 episodes in a row where they take tropes and they nail it. They absolutely nail it, which is why this is the best show on TV. It has been consistently great for 3 seasons. I have faith, and this just hit me now. I feel like they're easing us into James Kirk. Like Paul Wesley's, like we're being eased into it. It's not being forced on us. They're not going to cold open a show with him just being Kirk out of nowhere, right? If they were to continue this, it's almost like they're asking us, is this okay? Do you want to see this? Because I feel like more and more people are leaning into the idea of take this, you can move forward with him as Kirk, keep Ethan, like keep all the other role play, like move forward with him as Kirk, and continue like going to TOS, right? And I would be fully on board with that. That's all I want. Go ahead, Fert. I didn't mean to.
No, I think of all the period characterizations and breaking it. I mean, you had Mabenga rocking that late 60s fro. You had Christine doing, I believe the actress who plays Christine is Jess. I believe she's Australian, but she does a very convincing non-Australian accent as Chapel, and here she got to, it's almost like everyone's like, fine, use your real accents, and if you've been using your real accent, do another one. Like it was, kind of felt like that in a way. I think the one that actually came off, and even though some people might say it was the most on the nose or most obvious, I loved Uhura's speech as the agent. It was late in the show. I think it was her last scene as a suspect, saying, look, this show, this gives voice to people who look like, different, and people who feel different. And she was, obviously breaking that fourth wall again, talking about Star Trek fans. She's like over generations, and it. I love how they were able to work that and not have me roll my eyes and say, "Oh, come on." It was heartfelt. It was a love letter to the fans in the episode. I didn't think it was pandering or, all of that. I thought that was great. I love that moment, and I think she delivered that very well. And I'd like to say, again, we had Uhura forward episodes in prior seasons. She always, when she's like interacting with Scotty here, hypothetically, if I had lost communication with the holodeck, what would you do? And they had great chemistry. Like the actress who gives us Uhura Nyota, she's great. Like when she's on screen, it's hard to take your eyes off of her because her personality, it's so much more than what I think they really let Nichelle Nichols, they didn't give her all that runway back in the 60s. I mean, for obvious reasons. And I just think, I just love that every time I see her, I believe her in a tense moment when communications are down, and I believe her when Erica gets mad at her for, not defending her in the staff meeting, and I totally buy it. There's not a bad apple or a weak link in this cast, and we talk about writing and directing and special effects and all that, but if you cast the right people, and they can give voice to the words on the page, I mean, 75 to 80% of your work is done, because then you have Anson Mount and Rebecca Romaine and Ethan Peck and all these guys. Like, they run with it and bring their own shadings and nuances and everything to it. And so we should really applaud the behind the scenes, Paul Wesley finding that Kirk. That's a difficult role. Right? I mean, come on. They're trying to find another Kirk. You can argue with Chris Pine, and I'm sure that could be an alternative episode down the road, your favorite Kirk. But I mean, it's stepping into those shoes is a big deal. And yet we haven't sit there and said, that's not my Kirk, or, hashtag not my Kirk. From the guest roles to the main featured leads, I think this show has been extremely well cast for the Star Trek universe. Now, I don't know. Maybe if you put Ethan Peck in a modern rom-com, I don't know. Maybe the material doesn't quite, maybe it's not a perfect match. Maybe it is. Maybe Hollywood, you should be looking at these things. But for what they are asked to do on this show, and then stretch beyond what they are asked to do, this is this is really good stuff. So again, we talk about all the other elements behind the scenes that make this such a winner. I think casting, which is, again, that's one of the first things you do, and then, the rest of it is in the hands of the magicians. Their work lasts and from season to season, and I think that deserves some applause and some notice.
I'm going to kind of grab on your coattails here, and you can drag me along, because we talk about buying into all these characters, which I agree with. And I'm going to throw one more thing in there. I think Paul Wesley is the least look-alike character. You know what I mean by that? Like, the person who plays Uhura kind of, really, to me, kind of looks like Nichelle Nichols. And even the guy who plays Scotty, like, that's a believable James Doohan. I just feel like Paul Wesley has none of the physical attributes that Shatner has, but I still buy into it. So maybe I'm going against your point about actors or casting just a little bit, but the writing has been so good, I can get past the looks and buy into him being Kirk, right? Because isn't that part of it? One of the reasons why we want to see Sebastian Stan as Luke is because he does kind of look like Mark Hamill. Like, he looks like that younger Luke. And so it's a little bit easier to buy into. So I think that kind of helps as well. But anyway, so that's my last point there until I give my war course. Or I'll probably still say something anyway. Who knows?
And I'm on board with the casting as well. I think they've done a brilliant job. And what I think makes it great that they could lead into a TOS series is we're talking 60 years now removed. Now would be a fine time to do a new TOS, a new Star Trek series with that crew. And I think not only could you get away with it, but I think you could do things with it that are like Strange New Worlds, and you don't have to necessarily explain it. That, this is a separate timeline, or this is a different imagining. You could also save Pike at the end of this series. You could make it so that what happens to him and his vision of the future doesn't actually happen. And now the Enterprise takes a whole new path that's very different. And that's okay. I think that would be fine.
Yeah, and we looked this up last week. This is supposed to be canon, right? In the prime whatever timeline, in the Kirk TOS timeline that we know, this is part of that, right? So I think that's important too, right? Because when we saw the new Star Trek movies, that the whole idea was here's this other timeline, and this is where Kirk is now. Like, you know what I mean? I'm happy they didn't branch this off and say this is a third timeline. I don't know how much we truly need that. Because there's so much of it. It's like, talk about the trope has become a trope of itself with that now. Anyway.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of what we have here. But in terms of this episode, I think we get everything we want and more out of this cast, including the little behind-the-scenes jab at the cheese of the original series. So that brings me, gentlemen, to our Warp Core ratings. Where does this shake out for you? Let's start with Fert Derby. What do you think, sir?
I think because I watched it late at night, and I had just polished off a bowl of Creole gumbo, I think some of my brain cells weren't exactly at warp specifications. However, I think this is a really solid 6. I think it just misses the 7th overall. We have seen holodeck episodes before. We have seen them to varying degrees of, this isn't working, now what? And I don't know, with the safety protocols off, and Lon and everyone in real danger, maybe the writer in me wanted to see her briefly menaced by this holographic Spock, like that it didn't want her to solve the mystery, and she able to overcome it and then end the program. And I'm not sure, but it almost was too easy once she deduced it was Spock and she used her brain power to do it. I thought the reveal was good, but then it was just like, you caught me. And then it was like, okay, we're all set. And then everything, they even cut to a shot of the Enterprise engineering. Everything's red and, oh no, look, it's all blue. It's all safe. But that's a very, very minor quibble. I think 6 fits this pretty well. Jonathan Frakes is going to do little disservice to the franchise, and he's always coming in with great ideas. You know, he did it in front of the camera. He's done it on the big screen. He's done it behind the scenes. I love that he's still, even now, even if, you know, Riker is not, if we're not doing Legacy, I love that he's still there. He's still part of this family, this franchise, and he's willing to, you know, help shepherd this along, you know, with this new crew and new cast and new production teams and so forth. So every time his name we see when it's going to come, you know it's going to be different. It's going to be special one way or the other, and he did a really good job here. So 6 out of 7.
I feel like Frakes, by the way, is one of the first Star Trek actors to be proud of being a Star Trek actor and continuously pushed it. Right? Like I think he was the beginning, and now I think they all buy into that, and they all love being a part of the franchise. So I think that's an important point too. And I love what you said, because he loves to come back to it. Is not pushing for a Riker show, which he very well easily could have probably had at some point. Right? So I think there's a lot. That's a piece of that. Look, second episode in a row that should have failed, in my opinion. There have been so many chances taken in the seasons of Stranger Worlds. That musical, to me, could have failed. Like 9 times out of 10, that fails. The Z episode, 9 times out of 10, that fails. Something like this, I feel the same way. Because this is something we have seen before, but once again, they put their own spin on it. The writing is fantastic. The acting takes it to another level. I'm going 7.
Very good.
Yes, I would. And 6 is still great. We've had that discussion too. But again, tell me an off episode so far of Stranger Worlds.
Right.
There's no alternative factor here.
Nice.
I'm with Lord Uther. This is a 7 for me as well. I do think the resolution felt a little convenient, but this is a prototype holodeck. I would have liked to see a little menacing, but being that they're setting up a love story with Spock,
that yeah.
I don't think you could do that.
The cross currents wouldn't have worked. You're right.
Yep. So I'm extremely pleased with this. I also harken back to that musical episode, which the only thing that ruined that episode for me was the Klingon rap. If they changed that, I would be such a big fan of that episode. But that absolutely just was like a shiv in the side. I'm like, oh. I mean, it almost even felt racist. It was that bad. But everything else about that episode was great. This episode, it's kind of a nonstop banger. There's nothing here that I felt disappointed with. I enjoyed every bit of this ride. And I'm really looking forward to next week's episode. And if you want to join us and look forward to all episodes of all things Star Trek, hit that subscribe button, drop us a like, and a comment. What do you give out of 7 warp cores for an hour space adventure hour?
Yes.
I don't even remember the title. It was that good. But we here at the Warp Core Podcast will be exploring all strange new worlds and all things Star Trek. And until then, live long and prosper.